Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Switzer, and I'm the CBRCanada Programs Coordinator and the moderator for today's session, Omamoo Wango Gamik, Creating a Home for Indigenous Youth During a Global Pandemic. We have some fantastic speakers here with us today, Carola, Cunningham, and Cynthia Puddu, who I will be introducing shortly. Today's session is the 7th part in our 8-part session on community-based research and COVID-19. COVID-19 addressing widening inequities and amplifying community-based visions for change. And we are so fortunate today that Carola Cunningham, Elder, Honorary Doctorate, and CEO at Niginan Housing Ventures will help us open the session in a good way. Before I pass it off to Carola, with support from Cynthia, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping details. The event is being recorded and closed captioning is enabled. If you need it, you can toggle it on at the top of your screen. Following the opening and presentation by both Carola and Cynthia, we'll have a question and answer session. Please feel free to enter your questions throughout the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen throughout the presentation, and we will attend to them at the end. For any tech issues, please message Jesse. You'll find his name moderated to tech help in the presenters list. And while this event is in webinar format, we encourage you to join the dialogue, as some of you already have by chat. Many of you may be calling in from different locations. I'm personally calling in from Takaranto, as covered by Treaty 13. And so I invite yourself to kind of to enter and type into chat, say hello, including where you're calling in from or where your feet are planted. And just make sure that when you are entering anything into chat, make sure you toggle the chat to everyone instead of hosts and panelists so that everyone can see. Very quickly, for those of you who are new to CBRCanada, CBRCanada is a membership-based organization whose mission is to advance community-based research excellence in Canada by strengthening partnerships, building capacity, mobilizing knowledge, and championing community-based research amongst individuals. We are a social enterprise funded entirely by our members, and we have over 40 now. The Center for Community-Based Research, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, otherwise known as Waterloo, is the CBRCanada Secretariat. All right, so let's get started. I feel very, very grateful to be introducing our panelists today and our presenters, Dr. Carola Cunningham, as I mentioned, Elder, Honorary Doctorate, and CEO of Niginan Housing Ventures, and Dr. Cynthia Puddu, Assistant Professor at MacEwan University. I've already learned so much from both of you, Cynthia and Carola, and no doubt we are in for a lot of learning today on the incredible community-based research and programming that you have both been doing on Indigenous-led housing programs, including what it means to decolonize decolonize housing, decolonize research, and really center the voices of Indigenous young people. I'm going to be introducing both of our speakers today by way of bios and then pass it over to both of them. As mentioned previously, we are very, very honored that Dr. Carola Cunningham will be starting us off in a good way with an opening prayer. Just to note, we will not be recording the opening prayer. And so after I read the bios, we'll stop the recording and resume it prior to the presentation. So without further ado, Dr. Carola Cunningham has over 40 years of experience in education, justice, community health, and wellness and addictions recovery. She has designed, developed, and delivered programs tailored to the needs of Indigenous communities. She possesses firsthand knowledge of the complexities and diversities of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And in November 2021, so just this fall, Carola was awarded an honorary doctorate by MacEwan University to honor her achievements as a community builder, which embodies the university's values. And Cynthia will be joined with, Carola will be joined with Cynthia. Dr. Cynthia Puddu is a community-based researcher focusing on youth homelessness and structural barriers to housing. Using community-based participatory research methods, she works closely with unhoused youth in Edmonton, sharing the stories of difficulty and success. Cynthia is interested in using her research to work as an ally and advocate for populations that have been historically silenced. So I'll be stopping the recording now, just a moment, so I have time to do that. There we go.
So again, thank you, welcome. And we're going to be talking about the project Omamoo Wango Gamik, where Carola and the organization Niginan Housing Ventures have created a home for Indigenous youth. And we're going to talk about the complexities of doing it during a global pandemic. So just a quick overview, and we're going to do it as a dialogue. Carola, I'm going to basically be asking Carola some questions so she can share about her experiences, and then I'll share a little bit about our experiences in doing research. So we'll talk about why a decolonized approach to housing is important. Then we'll give an overview about the project, who they house, what they do, and the importance of culture and ceremony in this housing project. We'll talk about the challenges due to COVID, both for land-based learning and other programming at Omamoo Wango Gamik, and also with doing research. And hopefully, if we have time, we can share just a quick vignette of one of the youth that has been living in the project. So we'll start. Carola, if you can maybe give us your thoughts on why it's so important to take a decolonized approach to housing with the people that you work with.
Yeah, that's seems to be a common thread of understanding. We talk a lot about decolonizing and what does that mean? And so to me, it means returning to some things that make sense for us as a group of specialized people, like First Nations, Métis, Inuit, people here on Turtle Island have been here for a very long time, and yet we have been separated from the way we were naturally born in this land, and how we lived together, how we worked together, how we celebrated life together. And we were colonized into believing we were subservient, less than, and the way we lived was not appropriate in the Western world eyes. And so, you know, that whole historical trauma story of the disruptors that have affected our people, and the outcome that we see every day on the streets of all of our cities. How do we decolonize? How do we go back? And for me, it's to bring back our natural way of being. That's incorporating natural law and celebrating our life the way we do through ceremony.
So then we'll move on and talk specifically at Omamoo Wango Gamik. So I'd like to describe it as a multi-generational housing initiative. So there's young people, there are young families, there's single moms, there are cookums and mushums and elders on site. And so maybe if you can expand a bit on who you house, especially the youth that we are working with, and what you do specifically through the different programming at Omamoo Wango Gamik.
Yeah, so Omamoo Wango Gamik is a decolonized approach because what we've done at our site is to allow the way we lived naturally long ago to develop. And in a community, you have all ranges of people. You have young people, you have single mothers, you have old people, and they all had a responsibility to their community. And they were independent and interdependent all at the same time. But always we came together to celebrate, to be in ceremony, to sit on the land, to give direction to our young people, and for our young people to help old people. And so when I looked at how we could do that in the best way, you know, for the longest time, and I've been in this system for probably over 48 years, and I keep saying everything that the systems have created for our people don't work. We have the highest number of children in care. In Alberta, it's close to 75% Indigenous young people in care. In our jails, we're 85% of the people in institutions. In any system, we're the highest represented number of people. And those are the direct impacts of what colonization has done. And so for me, I think we need to look at how we treat people in a different way. And I never understood why Children's Services punished the children because their parents got off track. And so at Omamoo Wango Gamik, we want to keep the children in place, surrounded by their kokums and mushums, surrounded by their aunties and uncles, surrounded by that community that's there, where they can access the ability to speak their language, to be in ceremony, winter, summer, and fall, to celebrate the way we have weddings, the way we have funerals, the way we naturally did things. And that if the parents are not healthy and responding to raising their children in a good way, then the children stay in place and we continue to provide wraparound services, and the parents can be removed and they work their way back to their children. This way we don't start filling up systems full of our kids and they losing themselves in their identity, their connection to community, their connection to all of the things I spoke of before. And so that's a really big part of our program, is to keep children with their legitimate parents. And we will build that family reconciliation according to the people and not according to systems or policies. So every family is unique and they need unique strategies. So and I'm happy to share that within the year that we've been open, we've had 7 family enhancement orders removed. That means children that were at risk of being taken from their parents, that has been totally removed, and they are thriving at Omamoo Wango Gamik. And the reason they're thriving is because we operate as a community. So it's not uncommon every Friday to everybody be together on the 5th floor, and we share meals and we share stories. We have programming that suits the people's needs, like traditional parenting, Cookum's Kitchen, going to the land, harvesting medicine, going to the land for chicken dance, sun dance, fasting lodge, sweat lodge, and everybody's welcome to come and participate in the way they wish to participate. No one's forced to do anything. It's done collectively, but it's done without any expectation. And I think that makes a huge difference to people when you're given a chance to make your own mind up and to be surrounded by beautiful choices. People tend to want to do good things in their life. Nobody wants to be stuck in the rut of addiction. Nobody wants to lose their children. So when you wrap them around with the supports that we talk about, and when you wrap them around with kokums and mushums that actually live on site, the world changes dramatically for these people. The kokums and mushums that live on site live on the dry floor, on the 2nd floor, and they get a specialized rate rent from us. And what they do is make a commitment to give 16 hours of volunteer work to the people. And plus, on top of that, we have a regular full-time mushum and a full-time cultural support worker, so an oskapiosak. Those kokums that you're seeing on your screen right now come live there. They come in. If a family is looking at reconciliation, like we have some families that are working to take their children back out of the system, these kokums supervise those visits. They make recommendations. They work with the families. They offer the traditional parenting course, but they're just like your own grandmother living just down the road from you, and they will come over for tea, or you can go over and have tea with them, and it just creates that bond. And the little ones get really attached to our our elders, and it becomes much more community-based and helps everyone thrive better. In turn, we have the youth that work that live in the building, and so I made a conscious decision that, you know, Cynthia was the one that told me actually that when a youth is aging out or is moving out of the foster care system, you have 2 weeks to catch them before they hit the street. If they hit the street in a not good way, they spiral down and never sometimes ever get out of those systems. They end up in places like Ambrose Place, where we're at today, that house the most vulnerable, the most complex care needs in the system. So we wanted to prevent that. And part of that is reconciling and reclaiming identity, because a lot of kids that come out of foster care and think they are anything but Indigenous. Some of them think they're French, some of them think they're Greek, some of them think they're Italian. I know I have a little guy living with me right now that thought he was Mexican. So they all need to reclaim who they are and understand that we as a beautiful people have a beautiful way of life. And so those youth are involved in our youth program, and Cynthia is very much involved in the research of that project. But the concept behind that project is to give exposure to the youth to language, food, culture, ceremony, cookums and mushums, and our way of life. And it's our intent and our thought that once people reclaim their identity, they have a much better feeling about who they are, and they start to find purpose in their life. And so we call that program that with the youth is the Oskapios Warrior Program. And those kids are directed by the youth worker and the mushum. And much of our work being done with those youth are hopefully land-based programming. And so we also have regular level 1 housing people coming from the by names list that have newly been diagnosed with a mental health issue or a physical health issue, and they're unable to work, but they need light supports. And so that's what our community is based up of. And amazing things are happening there.
And so we're going to talk about, get into a bit more on the importance of ceremony and the role ceremony plays, but I just wanted to, somebody pointed this out to me this morning and I wanted to read it. So it's a tweet by Raki Pancholi, who is an MLA in Alberta. And I don't know if you've heard this because this is upsetting. It says a number of children and youth in the child intervention system who have died since last April in Alberta has now reached 45. 80% are Indigenous. So 18 children under 12 and 20 youth transitioning out of care. And so I think it's really upsetting. And this is why this program is so important, why the organization is working really hard to get those youth right when they're transitioning out of care and get them that support and bring them back, as Carola was saying, to their culture. And so maybe we can use this as a conversation on why culture and ceremony are so important to as that safety net for the young people.
Absolutely. Like it hurts my heart to hear those numbers. And I just think, you know, when I look at the 7 families that have now had their family enhancement orders lifted and they're working with their youth, my hope is those children that are being raised within our little community, when they start to create their family of creation, that their kids won't even be close to coming into care, that they understand who they are, they understand their purpose, they understand their direction. And that's what our culture and our ceremonies teach us. They bring us back to our creation story. Why did Creator create us? How did He create us? And what is our obligation to one another and to the land? You know, we were not born in a concrete jungle. We were born on the land. We came from the land. And you'll hear the elders say that, and you'll hear them say, and we will go back to the land. And one of our commitments, because all of our relatives made commitments to Creator what they would provide for us two-legged. When Creator created the two-legged, all Creator asked us to do was to take care of the land, take care of the water, take care of the earth, take care of all your relatives, so they will in turn take care of you. And when you take all of the frills and fanciness away from this life that we get caught up in believing that we need to have the best car and the best house and the shiniest of shoes, and you go back to our original teachings and you recognize that all Creator wants for us to do is walk and be in life in a kind way. And that's our governance model. That's our natural law teaching. And when we recognize that Creator wants us to be kind every day to everyone we interact with or anything we interact with, He wants us to be honest, to tell the truth, even when it's hard to tell the truth, but to apply kindness when we're sharing in our honesty. And that third law of governance is sharing. Share so that people can live. Share your knowledge, share your wisdom, share your kindness, share your honesty. When we live like this, and we live with all our relatives, all those standing people behind those people sitting there, all of everything that was created for us, we're going to have a good life and we'll become incredibly strong. And if we're based in those value systems, in those natural laws, and we learn to live within those settings, we become healthier, we become whole, we understand what our direction is. And then it becomes more important to say, how can I be in service to my people? How can I help them grow and be healthy and happy? And how can we grow together to create Miopi Matsuan, good life?
So the other thing so what's interesting, when did Omamoo Wango Gamik, it was fall of 2020 when it opened. So, during a pandemic. And there were lots of ups and downs just with getting the place open, and then along that with doing research. So I'm going to invite Carola to share the challenges for the organization in doing land-based teaching and any sort of community building during the pandemic. And then I'll talk a little bit about, as researchers, the challenges that we face. So we can start with the challenges that you face as an organization.
Yeah, because many of our contracts and our housing initiatives are funded by AHS, Alberta Health Services, we were required to follow their stipulations on how to deal with people when the outbreaks happened in COVID. And so, at the beginning, when we were all like freaking out because the numbers were so intense at the beginning and so many people were dying worldwide from COVID, that as soon as we got our first outbreak, everything closed down. People had to isolate in their rooms. You couldn't go out without your mask on anywhere in any of our buildings. You had to constantly be vigilant and being tested. And so when you start to isolate people, that brings up all kinds of other issues in mental health and emotional health and spiritual health and our ability to come and gather together and be together. And that's an essential need in our communities, is we don't make decisions in isolation. We always work together. And it doesn't matter who takes the lead. I may be the Okamau, I may be the chief of my operations, but really, when we have a problem, I look to my head men or women, and whoever has the skill set or the the knowledge or the desire to fulfill whatever the need that community is experiencing, they take the lead. And so we weren't able to function like that anymore. We had to, keep 6 feet apart. We had to be masked. We weren't allowed to touch each other. And we hug all the time. We hug every day, sometimes 4 times a day. And we're not allowed to shake hands. And that is a respectful thing to do. I mean, even when I'm offered this protocol, the contract is sealed by me receiving this print and this tobacco and shaking Cynthia's hand, because it makes that contract valid. And so because of all the restrictions, we weren't able to live the way we understand how to live. And it really affected our youth, because we wanted them to be on the land. We wanted them to learn how to harvest teepee poles and learn how to operate a chainsaw and help in all of our ceremonies across the land. And we were such always in flux with the disease, with the virus. Like one day we had to do this, the next day we had to do that. And so we were always like had sea legs when it came to, should we do this? Can we do this? Can we have a sweat? Or what? Okay, then the vaccine came in. Okay, now that we have the vaccine, can we have a sweat now? Maybe who smokes the pipe? Like it was so difficult. And I'm sure all of you can relate to what I'm talking about. COVID has really created some good things, but also some very harsh realities when it comes to people's mental well-being. And so we had a lot of challenges, and we had a hard time keeping the youth together and focused on why we had chosen them to live at Omamoo Wango Gamik. And so drug use escalated, gaming escalated, all of those things that take young people away from the land and the teachings that we were trying to impart.
And I'll just share a bit in terms of our challenges in doing research, and this being Community-Based Research Canada webinar. This is a community-based research project, and we strive for it to be Indigenous-led, so led by the guidance of Carola and the elders and the community. And the only way you can do that is by forming relationships. And I've learned a very important lesson on doing research and its management through valued relationships. And how do you create a relationship with people that you've never met before, and the first time you meet them is on Zoom, and they're in their late teens, early 20s, and have had various backgrounds and challenges. And so we tried, we are continually striving to do what we call engagement events, to engage both with the staff, because I believe it's the staff are such important people in this project, because it's not a project just about the youth, it's about a place, and the place involves not just the youth but the staff and the other residents. And so we work very hard to build relationships with staff, but it was often on Zoom meetings. And yesterday I was able to have a face-to-face meeting with some of the new staff, and it was really exciting, because it's a very different relationship that you forge, and especially with the youth. So we had these engagement events where we would bring youth together, and we would have them meet the research team, and we thought things were moving, and then lockdowns happened again, and one of them was really hard on the youth. That was the one Carola was talking about, where they were literally locked in their rooms, and and we tried to get them on. We tried to develop like Discord servers and things like that, and it just it's interesting. For some people, they create relationship online through Discord, but for other people, if they don't have a pre-existing relationship, starting a relationship online just it wasn't working. It's weird. In fact, that was what some of the youth said. This is weird. And so we keep working. So I've said, we've been working at this for almost 2 years, and I still don't have an interview. But what have we learned? We've learned a lot about the importance of relationship building in community-based research and within Indigenous research methodologies. And so that's what we keep doing. So I would say if anyone is doing this type of work, is patience is definitely the most important part, better than any PhD training that you get, is the patience to just to keep at it, and the understanding of the importance of the work for the community, and sharing the experiences that we are hearing and learning, and sharing this with everyone. So even though we may not have any interviews, we definitely have a lot of knowledge from this past year and a half that has made us grow as a research team and as individuals. So I think we've got a couple minutes left, and we want to leave you with just a story, some experiences from one of the residents that is at that started out Omamoo Wango Gamik. He's now moved here to Ambrose because he needs a little bit more permanent support, but he's given some, Ian is a lovely young man who has learned a lot and has really gained a lot of insight from the experiences at Omamoo Wango Gamik. So we've just got a brief video with Ian.
Can you just in your own words kind of tell us what it's been like the last little while for you living at Omamoo and your involvement with the elders and being on the land in ceremony?
Actually, it's been very wonderful. It's been very wonderful. I think it's actually a privilege to live here. But it was. I remember not only that, but I think what really got me was the friends I got, like the community here. You know. Yeah.
And what's it like to be living in the same apartment that cookums are available? And
I love that actually. When I was at fasting camp, and it was Teresa. Teresa's there. I just love Teresa. She brought me to tears with her teaching. I was like, oh my God, it's so true. It's so real, you know. But it was beautiful, so poignant. It was then against the backdrop of love, the what is it? She was in the building. One of the best elders. She lives in the building. I didn't know she lived in the building. I was so happy when I discovered Teresa lived in the building. It was amazing.
When you're living at Omamoo, did you go to treatment?
I did. Yeah, I did. I went to treatment for it. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And how's your drug use now?
It's good.
It's good.
It's not good.
Does that mean it's?
I'm myself, you know. I've slowed down quite a lot. I'm still gonna slow down even more, you know.
But it's better.
Oh, it's way better. Holy smokes! I came more.
Can I ask you, Ian, what's your favorite part about living at Omamoo Wango Gamik?
Oh, the friendship. Actually, I think it's the fact we're all selected to live here. We're all like carefully selected to live here. I remember saying that, you know, and it was all like we're all handpicked to be here. Favorite part of me, Omamoo was all of it. I can't really say what, but I think it's inherently every day waking up with friends every day. We're going to take community every day, and like good people that are chosen to be here. I think that relates to the fact that you interviewed everyone. You want people who are interested and stuff like that. You obviously told them, you know, this is a community. You can't just. It's not even. You don't just get to shut the door. You know, stuff like that. And hopefully that's it. And I think that's the awesome part is the friends, the people I have here, the community. And Sally. And then Kevin Levin, the artist. Actually, one time I was in the middle of the night. Kevin the artist across. We were talking just for the whole night, you know.
That's great.
So
thanks, Ian.
Can you tell me what happens for you when you go into the sweat lodge, when you're in ceremony? How does that affect your heart?
It's just stronger. Well, like physically makes it stronger. Like, you know, I'm like it's great. I'm like enticed, you know, like, I mean, physically I'm enticed, but mentally, actually one time I had visions about, well, geez, I do, actually, that's, how do I start with that? I had visions of like Israel and shit like that, fertile Israel, when Israel was fertile, and Jesus, like, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
Can you just in your own?
Get to the next slide, and it's not working for me. There we go. So that was Ian just talking about his experiences. It went on a little longer, so we want to make sure that we end on time, and we're ending on time. Look at that. So we're going to open it up to questions, but first I just again want to thank Carola for all her wisdom, and also for our funders. So making the shift Youth Homelessness Innovation Lab. It's funded by the Government of Canada's Networks of Centres for Excellence, and they are funding this research. So I want to thank them as well. We wouldn't be able to do the research without their support. And again, thank Omamoo Wango Gamik, the staff, the residents, and everyone that we've been working with so far. That's our presentation, and now we're ready for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Carola and Cynthia. That was, I'm still, the hard part about moderating is I'm still stuck like thinking about everything that you shared in terms of the importance of decolonizing approaches to housing, the intergenerational approach, the wraparound Cookham support, what it means to be on the land and connection, and then how that came apart over COVID-19. And just really want to express a lot of gratitude to both of you and your team for doing this work, and Carola again for helping us open up in a good way, and Cynthia for being in person to be able to ensure that the proper protocols are followed. There's lots of chatter already in the chat, so I encourage you to take a look there. Folks have been echoing resonances and appreciation for your work and sharing some similar experiences as well. So just to note, thank you to all of you who are chatting, because your voices are important to have you in the room, even though it's not always captured in the recording after the fact. So yes, indeed, amazing and inspiring work. Okay, so we're now at the question and answer period. I'm going to encourage folks to type their questions into chat. There's a little the question and answer box at the bottom. It looks like two little chat signs, and I'll let folks do that. And I'm just going to look above to see if there are any questions in chat as folks are entering it into the Q&A field. Just a sec.
We did, but we had to be careful.
All right, so lots of questions. The first question that I see here, alongside lots of congratulations and appreciation for your work, is from Tina. How would a family go about getting into your program?
They would apply. There's an application form, and then they go through an interview, and then it would come to the selection committee, and we would look at compatibility with everyone else that lives there and their goals on how they were wanting to enhance their lives. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Carola. And another question here from Caitlin. Amazing and inspiring work. Thank you. Is the program connected to the local homelessness system in any way, as in do referrals come through the system, funding, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. We channel people through the Housing First initiative through Homeward Trust. And so everybody's on the system, and we're actually seeing people being housed that were couch surfing or living with other people or actually in shelter systems.
Thank you so much, Carola. All right, we've got another question here from Linda. Linda writes, I have a question about funding for the project. Who funds it? And what did you use as a case for support? I think, Cynthia, you spoke a little bit about the funders earlier.
Well, Making the Shift is funding the research. And part of that funding helps a little bit. We were able to use some of that funding to hire a youth worker, but the actual building and everything, that Carola can touch on that. That's a lot more complex.
So the majority of our funding comes from Homeward Trust. So that's the CAB here in Edmonton for houselessness. And we also have a treatment mobile team that comes in and does some healthcare. And it goes between various sites that we operate. And that's funded through Alberta Health Services. Somebody made a comment that about going to ceremony. I want people to know that when we could, we absolutely did go to ceremony. And one of the big events that we were able to get them to is we were able to take them to a chicken dance and to a fasting lodge ceremony. The fasting lodge ceremony was on the land for like 5 days. And just in those 2 ceremonies that we were able to get people to last summer, the change in people was phenomenal. And so it just demonstrated even further how important it was to get our people back to the land. And I forgot to mention that we have natural uncles and aunties right in the building. And so there's a picture on our slide of one of the artists that did a wonderful mural in our community room. And he taught everyone about the teachings. He had some of the youth involved in the project. He continues to support people when there's no staff available. Like Ian talked about sitting up all night talking to him one evening. So Kevin was probably painting and Ian came and sat with him. So I think that's what makes it so unique, is that the people in the community access each other with or without staff, and that we have natural helpers in the building.
And just also, you know, Carola mentioned they did do ceremony as often as possible, but also said to me they had to be very careful. I know there was, in the fall when the Delta outbreak started to become bad in Alberta, there were outbreaks and several elders got quite sick, and we lost an elder who was our elder in residence at MacEwan. And so, you know, it just,
We had to be careful.
yeah.
Yeah, and just so much loss there, especially in, you know, in a context where everyone is so close, yeah, and connected. All right, so we have another question from an anonymous attendee. I'll read it out. Thank you so much. How can we push for a more decolonized and Indigenous-centered housing without putting more pressure on folks like Carola, i.e. recent housing announcement of a 2-bedroom apartment building near Market between private developer Catholic Social Services and, you know, Cree Nation?
So how can you be more involved in that? I think that absolutely allyships and developments from private sector groups and nonprofit groups working together, like the count went up for houselessness during COVID. I just can't believe how many people are suffering without housing, proper affordable housing. And so anywhere where we can be supported, you know, I just find it so amazing that to do an initiative like create more funding available to create housing initiatives or safe site inductions might cost a taxpayer $1 a month more, $20 a year. And yet we still have people that go, hey, I'm not supporting drug use and I'm not supporting housing people that have an addiction problem. Well, the problem doesn't go away if we don't find solutions on how to address it. And addictions is a disease. It's not just somebody that doesn't have willpower. And when you add on top of the disease all of the trauma that our people have endured, it's quite amazing that our people continue to be resilient. I think what's amazing is when we're given a chance for Indigenous people to support their own people with the support of allyship, with the proper partners, we do amazing work. We're reducing kids in care. We're reducing single mothers going homeless and their kids going into care, couples breaking up and their kids going into care, youth ending up on the street and spiraling down into the justice system or the street system. Like, it's a no-brainer to work together. And I think anywhere you can help, then that's where we want you to be.
And I think it's important because I think the question was, how do we move towards a more decolonized approach? It is to give the support, and when I say support, funding, give the money to the Indigenous organizations because they know what they're doing, and let them do it. And so, and then as allies, we support that because oftentimes it's, you know, organizations that maybe have like an Indigenous consultant, an Indigenous staff member or whatever, and I think Niginan has shown that you can be successful when you give the supports to the people that have the experience and know what is needed in that community. And I think that's the best way to do that. And also, you know, from a care system, like, you know, reducing those numbers that we're talking about, kids in care, stop putting Indigenous kids in care and put them in families like Carola is doing.
Somebody was asking a question about the mix of people in our facility and having a dry floor. I want to say that a lot of people that suffer from houselessness often have mental health and addictions issues going on, or both. And we although our push forward in the house is to create a sober environment, especially for people with young children. And so we're not saying that you can't struggle with those things, but we need to work with you to work towards sobriety, to work towards a cleaner life where your children are not being affected by your use of drugs and alcohol, and that you're not putting them in jeopardy to be taken away, and that the people that are coming in without children, they also have to be on a trajectory towards sobriety and clean life. But we bring people in that are struggling, but they want that change, and we help them make that change, support them.
Yeah, and so not at Omamoo Wango Gamik, but at Ambrose Place that is run also by Niginan, they have a managed alcohol program, they have a managed cannabis program, and so it's an understanding that not everyone will get there, right? It's meeting people where they're at and having them, again, be surrounded by wonderful choices that they end up just probably not through thought, but by being surrounded by medicines and ceremony, they start to make a decision that, hey, I want to go there, and I need to be sober to go there. So I'm going to work at this because I feel really good when I'm on the land. I feel really good when I'm in ceremony. So.
Thank you so much, Carola and Cynthia. So we have a few more questions in the question and answer kind of bin on Zoom that I'm going to read out. And just to say to everyone watching, thank you all for all your questions. If we don't have time to get to all of them, I've actually asked Jesse to write down some of the questions we might not get to, and then I'll connect with Carola and Cynthia afterwards in case there's more dialogue there. So this is a question from James. James wants to know a little bit more about the work that you're doing on the land. And so I figured that's a good segue given what you just shared.
Right. So there's always so much work to be done. And part of being in ceremony is actually doing the work. And so when we live on the land, we're packing water, we're cutting wood, we're preparing food for whoever shows up for the ceremony. We're preparing ceremony food. We're getting people ready. Where the pipe man needs help, the pipe woman needs help. We need oscapios to serve the people the food. Like, there's so much going on when we're in ceremony. And so we try to access local Indigenous ceremonies that are happening in different places in Alberta, but we also host a yearly fast. That means any of our tenants from any of our sites can come there, and they're known, and it's their sometimes first exposure to ceremony. And so they're not beaten up because they might make a mistake. We work with them to understand protocol and how to be in ceremony and what the ceremony is about. And that's all part of decolonizing, because, you know, sometimes, like, and I know in my struggle to reclaim my identity in ceremony, sometimes the elders were harsh in their teachings, and it was because, and I understand why they were, because these mistakes have consequences. However, they can be taught in a good way so people develop an understanding. The last thing we want to do is have people turn away from ceremony because they had a bad experience. And so when we host our own ceremonies, we work with the people long before they go to the land, so they start to understand what is the expectation in going to ceremony. Because like I said, sometimes it's their first time.
That's something we're trying to capture actually through this research is, you know, it started with chronicling the experiences of the youth, but we really understood that beyond that, it's that going back to your culture and ceremony is a process, and to understand that process and how it's very different for every person. And so not everyone is going to be ready at the same time. And so those are things that we're trying to capture it with the research as well.
Thank you so much, both of you. What you know, these webinars, they're an hour and they go by so quickly. I wish we had more time. We are unfortunately at time. Before we close out, I'm going to share my screen again, just a moment, so we can tell all of you about what's coming next week, because we will be continuing the conversation. This is not, this is certainly not the end. Just a sec. There we go. All right. So as I mentioned, this is not the end, it's just the beginning. We really encourage you to come out to next week's live discussion. For those of you who have never been to one of the CBR Canada live discussions, they're really terrific events. Jessie has popped the link in the chat. We are very fortunate that Carola and Cynthia will be joining us as facilitators for that discussion. So this is really an opportunity for us to turn the mic over to all of you and to have a really interactive dialogue on the very issues they presented in the webinar. So we'll be talking about what a decolonizing approach to housing looks like. How does one do community-based research within institutions that may be set up with really colonial structures? You know, how do we continue to advocate for change? And so please come out. They're really, really great events. And the other thing that I'm going to have Jessie do is to pop the link to our newsletter into the chat. This is another way to keep on top of upcoming events. So both links should be there. Also, for those of you who might not be familiar with CBR Canada, we have a CBR Canada Awards program. Our call for nominations for 2 awards, the Community Campus Research Partnership Award and the Emerging Community-Based Researcher Award. The nominations are coming up. They're due April 3rd. I believe this project was actually nominated for one of the awards last year. So you can just see the quality of such fabulous work that's happening. And we are so thrilled at CBR Canada to be able to promote this particular project. So Jessie will pop the link into chat for the awards. This event is recorded and will be posted online shortly for those of you who knew folks that weren't able to attend. Tell us what you think. We always like feedback, how we can improve. And finally, much gratitude to both of you, Carola and Cynthia. Thank you, Marcy. Thank you for everyone in the room, your dialogue, your conversations, your chat. For those of you who we weren't able to hear from in terms of questions, we have made note of the questions. We'll be in touch, and please bring the questions as well to next week's event.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from, and we will see you soon.